This is a reaction video. Now, this isn't like one of those reaction videos you see on YouTube. You know, opera singer hears Highway to Hell for the first time or something like that. I'm making this video as a reaction to a tweet I saw by a popular science and technology YouTuber who shall remain anonymous. The tweet reads, after flying F-14s for the aerial stunts in Top Gun, Scott Altman became an astronaut. Here's him landing the shuttle. I think he planted that nose wheel like he was landing on a carrier. Now, I don't think this YouTuber meant to be technically inaccurate over the course of authoring this tweet that attempts to cleverly link Scooter Altman's Tomcat landings with his shuttle landings, but the fact it is inaccurate gave me the spark to create this episode. Landing the F-14 on an aircraft carrier and landing the space shuttle are about as different as two manned aircraft landings can be. But before we go over the details of the differences, let me provide a little background. As the tweet states, Scott Scooter Altman was a Tomcat pilot who flew some of the flying scenes in the original Top Gun movie while he was attached to VF-51 before he became a test pilot involved in the F-14D program. He was then a department head in VF-31 when he was picked up for the astronaut program in 1994. During his NASA career, he was part of the crew on 4 space shuttle missions, 2 as a pilot and 2 as the mission commander. His bio roughly means that he landed the F-14 on various aircraft carriers, I'm guessing around 400 times, and he landed the space shuttle either at Edwards Air Force Base or Kennedy Space Center 4 times. As I documented on the channel previously, in 1990, I was invited to visit Johnson Space Center by Captain Bill Shepard, a Navy SEAL-turned-astronaut. During that visit, Shep facilitated access to a lot of cool training that the astronauts go through, including the Vomit Comet that flew a parabolic profile that creates 0G 30 seconds at a time, and the Shuttle Training Aircraft, or STA, which was a Gulfstream II that was modified to simulate the space shuttle's unique approach profile. I flew from Houston, where the Johnson Space Center is, to El Paso, where the STA was based. The astronaut doing a training flight that day was Frank Culbertson, who I knew from our time at VF-101, the F-14 training squadron. I was going through my initial RIO training, and Frank was transitioning from the F-4 to the F-14 when he was picked up by NASA to be an astronaut. Keeping up with what's going on these days is a challenge, which is why ground news is an integral tool in my YouTube channel research when I'm creating current events episodes. Let me show you how it works. Let's select the Israel-Palestinian conflict, a fast-moving and politically charged topic. The first thing you see is how many articles have been published on the story. Then you have the bias distribution, which is based on ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. On each landing page, I can see every article about a topic and compare headlines. And besides every headline, there's a tag showing me the political bias, reliability, and this is key, ownership of the source. You just can't get this kind of detailed breakdown at a glance like this anywhere else. If you go to ground.news/Ward Carroll, you can subscribe for as little as $5 a month or get 40% off unlimited access to the Vantage subscription, which is what I use. And when you subscribe, you're not only supporting me, you're supporting an independent platform trying to make the news more transparent, which is a mission I can get behind. The link is in the episode description below, so check it out. In the pre-flight brief, I got to see the profile the STA would be flying to simulate the shuttle approach. Now, the actual space shuttle's full approach started after it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and passed over the landing site at 80,000 feet. NASA had a number of landing sites for the shuttle program, but most of the landings took place at either Edwards Air Force Base in California or the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The STA profile picked up the last quarter of the real profile, which started at 20,000 feet. Before we took off, they let me sit in the left seat and fly the shuttle approach profile in the on-deck simulator mode. It was tricky in the endgame. More on that in a second. Now, the shuttle wasn't powered for landing, so it was a massive glider coming down very fast. The shuttle pilot only had one chance to land. There were no go-arounds. To simulate the shuttle's descent rate and drag profile, the STA had some unique modifications. First, to replicate the drag, the engines were modified to be able to go into reverse thrust in flight, and the main gear was lowered independent of the nose gear. Unlike a normal aircraft with a center of rotation near the middle of the fuselage, the shuttle's center of rotation was at the nose of the vehicle, which meant that when the pilot programmed aft stick, the nose didn't go up, the tail went down. To simulate that flight characteristic, the STA's flaps were modded to go up as well as down. The STA was flown by a NASA instructor in the right seat with normal Gulfstream II flight controls. Once they got to altitude, the instructor would hand over control to the astronaut in training in the left seat, who had space shuttle controls and displays, including an approach profile indicator and a HUD. The shuttle approach profile was flown from 20,000 feet down to 20 feet above the ground, and at that point, control was passed back to the instructor, who would stow the thrust reversers and begin the climb back to altitude to do another one. During a training flight, the astronaut in training would fly the profile multiple times. I can't remember exactly how many approaches Frank Culbertson did on the day I joined him in the STA, but it was a bunch. So let's contrast the shuttle's final approach with that of a Tomcat coming aboard the boat. On final approach, the shuttle is flying about 300 knots or so with a vertical speed of over 4,000 feet per minute. A Tomcat is flying at no more than 140 knots at max arrested landing weight with a vertical speed of 700 feet per minute. Let's break down a split screen of one of Scooter's approaches and landings.
10,000 feet.
10,000.
The first HUD presentation we see has an airspeed in knots down the left side and altitude in thousands of feet down the right. In the middle, we see the flight path marker, that circle with lines coming out of either side in the top, sometimes called a tadpole, and carrots on either side. The pilot's job is to keep the flight path marker level with the carrots.
10,000 body flaps going to trail. I don't see approach line yet. I think maybe we did get it.
Body flap went to trail. You got it.
Okay, thanks.
Nappies look good.
Okay, Scooter, 7,000 feet.
Just like pilot, right, Jack?
Yep. 6,000 feet. You're looking good. 5,000.
I see radar.
Good. 1's good. Back to 2. I'm decluttering.
Now at this point you hear Scooter transmitted, "I'm decluttering," which gives him a cleaner HUD presentation for the final part of the approach and landing. In this presentation you have airspeed in knots on the left and the vertical speed in feet per minute on the right. Again, Scooter's main focus is keeping the flight path marker even with the carrots.
Hey, I see the pull-up cues.
Now you see two other carrots working up from the bottom of the HUD. Those are the pull-up cue, and the trick is to catch them just right to set the proper flare attitude to arrest the rate of descent for touchdown. I can tell you from my STA approach simulator profiles I did before we launched that it takes practice to correctly anticipate the amount of aft stick required to catch the pull-up cue carrots. The first few times I tried it, I massively lagged them.
Next call is the speed brakes, Megan.
Roger at 3,000.
Okay.
I see the speed brake moving now.
Pilot controls a speed brake, which is created by the rudder splitting to manage airspeed.
Pull up cues
Going
coming,
to
Scooter.
23, Scooter.
Approaching the pre-flare. Arm the gear.
I got a good light.
I'm in the pull-up.
In the pull. Max speed 317, Scooter.
Copy. Looking for the ball bar.
Okay. 700. I got a ball bar.
Now you hear him basically call the ball, and this is a ball bar. Not unlike the Fresnel lens at the carrier or any optical landing system, the idea is to keep the center ball even with, in this case, the red lights on either side of it.
600, 500, 400
Gear down.
on time.
Driving it down.
So they call for the gear, and he drops the gear very close to touchdown.
Intercepting the ball bar.
Here's down.
100,
Ball
250. Good, looking good. Good ball bar.
Card in the
50,
flare.
250. 30, 230. 20, 220.
Right there.
10, 210. I agree.
Another major contrast with the Tomcat here is a Tomcat doesn't flare at all. It touches down at 700 feet per minute, which is why carrier-based fighters are so beefy compared to Air Force fighters, while the Space Shuttle touches down at 4 feet per minute.
Shoot.
Nice.
185.
Derotating.
The shuttle slows down by a combination of the drag chute, which you see was just deployed, and aerodynamic braking, where the pilot holds the nose up as long as the relative wind over the wings and against the fuselage allows. At the point it's not enough, the nose gear will simply fall to the runway. Unlike what the popular YouTuber tweeted, Scooter didn't quote-unquote plan it, it just happens when it happens. Since we're on the subject, let me dedicate this episode to the crews of Challenger and Columbia who were lost over the course of 34 years of the Space Shuttle program. May the memory of those tragic days continue to inform safe operations going forward. All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you're not already a subscriber, become one so you don't miss anything going forward. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon below, or become a patron at patreon.com/WardCarroll. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.